that's a very fair and valid question. I think that, most people that might even, not really recognize that they have Islamophobic beliefs or that they have misguided interpretations of Islam look at things like this and are very frustrated and don't understand why this is happening. Yeah, so, for example, I could tell you, like, the word infidel doesn't even appear in the Quran. It's when societies or cultures or communities lack civic institutions, when they lack a voice, when they don't have the channels that we have here in the United States to be, democratically involved in their society, in their economy, in their culture, in their community, there's a lot of frustrations. And I think that rather than the United States or people in the West asking, why is this happening, it's much easier to say this is happening because of who they are. And this is happening, if you read the Quran, if you read, the hundreds and hundreds of daily very firm denouncements of use of violence and of terrorism and of radical activity by respected Islamic leaders globally in the community. Just recently there was a conference in Morocco where Muslim leaders from all over the world met to talk about the rights of religious minorities in Muslim majority countries. And I think that there are political frustrations in the Middle East. I think that there is a significant vacuum of social institutions and a significant vacuum of democratic processes that lead to these problems and these frustrations. And you have groups that intentionally manipulate religion to control these groups of people, the same way that groups, individuals and groups are preyed upon and manipulated in the West to support someone like Donald Trump. This can happen in any community, in any society. And you have representatives in Tallahassee openly saying that this is a Judeo-Christian nation and therefore we have to be fearful of Muslim Americans. Well, these people are preying on and using religion to manipulate and divide communities the same way that people in any society, in any country where there are political frustrations, prey and manipulate people using religion. And I urge people to visit their local mosques. And I often meet with legislators and elected officials that have never met a Muslim before, that don't have a Muslim friends, that have never... Okay, well, that's great. I definitely urge you to explore these questions and these perspectives with your local Muslim community and to read the Quran and to read Muslim scholars that are respected globally in their positions on these pieces. And you will find that the Islamic faith, just like any other of the Abrahamic faiths, is a largely, and most people that study faith and theology actually say that Islam, the texts of the Muslim faith are actually more peaceful than the Bible, or more peaceful. I can manipulate lines in the Bible, or I can manipulate lines in the Old Testament, in the Old
Testament, the Torah, right?
In the Torah to call people to arms or to call people to do violent things. And I think that just as critical thinking, human beings, we have to be better than that, and we have to be able to see beyond why people are doing what they're doing on a surface level.
Aaron, thanks so much for your call. I appreciate that. Let's hear from JC in Lakeland. Hi, JC.
Hi,
Good.
JC.
JC, thanks so much for that call. Thank you for that insight.
Thank you, JC. Thank you for what you and your community are doing. And I think in the wake of challenging moments such as, what we're faced with right now in the United States with the presidential election and just beyond that as well, this is exactly what our community should be doing. And I'm very happy to see that this group is coming together in Polk County, and there are many challenges that Polk County faces with the Sheriff's Department there, and I'm very familiar with them, so thank you all for what you're doing.
All right, well, thanks for that call, JC, and we have some other callers on the line, but I want to make sure that I get this topic in as well. When you were here 4 weeks ago, you told us about this bill in the state legislature that has now passed the Florida House and the Florida Senate. It's awaiting Governor Rick Scott's signature. And in a letter you signed to Governor Rick Scott, you asked him to veto what's called SB 86 or HB 527 that would create a blacklist of companies that boycott Israel and would prohibit public entities from contracting with these companies. There's a few other things this bill does, but essentially it's being nicknamed the anti-BDS bill. So if there's a company that decides it's not going to do business with Israel because of boycott, divestment, and sanctions, then the state of Florida will, if this bill is signed by the governor, which it probably will be, it will that company will be sanctioned by the state.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in the words of the bill sponsor of this legislation, they were kind of presenting it as if you boycott the state of Israel, the state of Florida will boycott you. And it's definitely a very dangerous attack on constitutionally protected free speech, and we think that businesses and organizations and individuals have a right to demand their free speech in the United States, and the state cannot sanction individuals because of the political speech that they're making. And beyond that, that's kind of the angle of approaching this legislation as a civil rights, civil liberties group, but also because the BDS movement is largely also misunderstood in the United States and in the halls of the Florida State Legislature. It's not a discriminatory movement that discriminates, on the state of Israel because it's a Jewish state. It's a movement that is calling for the equal, humane treatment of Palestinians, equal law, equal protections, and the human rights violations concerns that groups globally have, that the Palestinian people are living with daily because of the Israeli military occupation. So you have this global grassroots movement calling and demanding for human rights, and now you have the state of Florida sending a very clear message that this grassroots human rights movement is not welcome in the state of Florida, and if you're a business that associates yourself with the BDS movement, the state will sanction you.
The BDS campaign regarding Palestine and Israel has been compared with, in the 80s, the apartheid, people boycotting the apartheid regime of South Africa. Now, we're not even going to get into, is Israel an apartheid state? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the actions that individuals and groups took in the 80s and 70s where they decided to boycott South Africa because of what was happening in South Africa. That's pretty similar to what's happening with BDS right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for groups and individuals that feel that they have no political power and no political representation, boycott has historically proven to be a very effective, nonviolent method to achieve political demands and to achieve human rights. And beyond South Africa, we also had, Chavez here in the United States with the grape boycott. That was very effective, and that was a turning point in the United States history of offering farm workers labor rights and treating farm workers humanely in the United States. And there's many, many examples. Desmond Tutu of South Africa has openly endorsed the BDS campaign because of his history and understanding the power and the impact of individuals coming together to use their economic power to demand political change.
So the state of Florida versus Desmond Tutu, I guess, is the big matchup right now.
Yeah.
So what's the likelihood that Governor Scott will read your letter and see the light and not sign it?
Well, I know that his policy people have received the letter. I know that his office is aware of our concerns with the legislation, and we definitely hope that the governor will veto this bill, but I'm not holding on to that hope. And we have an interesting history in the state of Florida with these provisions, because the state legislature tried to do something very similar in 2012, and it tried to sanction businesses in the state of Florida that were doing business with Cuba. And as soon as that law was passed, an injunction was filed in a federal court upheld that was an unconstitutional bill that the state of Florida had passed. So we hope that Governor Scott will take into account that there's an interesting case precedent in the state of Florida with similar provisions, and take into account that the state of Florida, it's a very dangerous precedent to set, that we are now sanctioning businesses because of their political speech, and even more dangerous that we're potentially sanctioning businesses because of their humanitarian political speech.
My guest is Laila Abdelaziz. She's Legislative and Government Affairs Director of CAIR-Florida. She's also a board member here at WMNF. It's 12:56 in the afternoon. We're going to go back to the phone, and let's get Roscoe on the line from Sanford. Hi, Roscoe.
Hi, Roscoe. Thanks for calling.
You're
I'm sorry you feel that way, and I think that it's in the.
Well, so Roscoe, if this had been a different type of racial joke, like if somebody had made a joke into an African American person or something.
So my cause is tackling Islamophobia in our community, and the fact that there is a significant increase in hate incidents targeting Muslim Americans. Faith communities are being vandalized, people are being verbally harassed, and my whole point of bringing this comment to public light is that making a joke as a public official at the expense of another individual's integrity, at another individual's faith, is a very offensive thing to do. And, everyone is free to interpret that as they may, but I think the stories have covered the incident pretty fairly.
Roscoe, thank you for that call. I appreciate that. Let's go to Jim in Tampa. Hi, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I'll check it out.
All right, Jim, thank you for that call. Let's try one more call. Eric in Tampa, do you have a quick question or comment? work. That's very kind of you, he says sarcastically. Appreciate the call, and thanks so much for everyone who called, and thank you for joining me on WMNF's Midpoint. Laila?
Thank you, Seán. Thanks for having me.
So Laila Abdelaziz is Legislative and Government Affairs Director of CAIR-Florida, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and I'm Seán Kinane. I'm the host of WMNF News Midpoint Monday. Tomorrow at noon, Mark Bureau will host Midpoint Tuesday. I want to thank everyone who called, emailed, and texted today. And if you didn't get a chance to call in, you can leave a voicemail, and I'll play it next week. Here's the number, 813-238-8001, extension 114. You can also join the conversation online at wmnf.org/news or on Facebook or Twitter at WMNF News. I want to thank our engineers James Rossi and Frank Knox. Stay tuned for great music with Flea on WMNF Tampa.